Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Denver Startup Week. For those of you that's your first session, you should have got up earlier because the morning was amazing. For those of you who've been here all day, thank you. We've had some incredible sessions today. I encourage you to sign up frequent and often and attend as many as you can. We get one time a year to celebrate all things Denver Startup Week, and it's this week. So get out there and enjoy. Our next session is absolutely awesome. It is a discussion around the space economy and Colorado's role as a space tech leader. And in this discussion, we're going to talk about where Colorado stands in the world of the space economy, the future and the activities that are happening right here in our state, the exciting companies that are leading the charge that are going to absolutely blow your mind of what's happening here in this industry. And most importantly, you're going to be able to meet some incredible entrepreneurs and some incredible leaders that are at the very front of the charge of leading this space economy forward in our state. With that, I would love to bring up Brad Bernthal, who is the Executive Director of the Silicon Flatiron Center at the University of Colorado Boulder, to introduce the panel and get us started. Brad?
In the interest of time, I'm going to invite all the panelists to come up and get situated as we're getting underway. First, welcome everybody. Delighted to see such a robust turnout for what I think is going to be an excellent discussion. Also, I hope that I'm part of a parade of thank yous to Eric and the organizers. Eric is a longtime friend in the startup community who has been an incredible infrastructure builder. While we're applauding, can we give one more applause for Eric and the team? All right, so welcome. Topic here is space economy. Here's how we're going to proceed. First, we're going to do a quick round of introductions. Second, we're going to have a level-setting presentation about why space industry, what's going on here in the Front Range. Third, we'll have panel discussion about 140, last 10 minutes Q&A. So that's where we're going. By way of introductions, I'm going to have each of the panelists say in about a minute, distill your life's work to a minute or less, please, as to who you are, your company, and then we'll drill down with that. Chris, maybe I'll ask you to go first. Chris?
All right. Hi, everybody. Nice to be here. Thank you. Chris Pearson, I'm CEO of Agile Space Industries. I've been in space industry for all my career, so about 25 years plus, originally from the UK. Been lucky enough to scale 3 different space companies in state here, on the 3rd one with Agile. We're actually based down in Durango. We have about 85 employees, growing like crazy down there at the moment to kind of scale up for a bunch of production work we're doing across space. And yeah, we do chemical propulsion, which is basically a technology that allows you to change speed in space, which allows you then to change orbit in space, and very quickly, actually. So yeah, we produce engines and thrusters. If you go down to the Durango airport, you'll see us actually firing thrusters on one side and actually building them on the other side. So yeah, down in Durango. Great to be here. Thank you.
Matt Shea. Matt?
All right. Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me here today. Matt Shea, co-founder, CEO at Canopy. Spent my prior career in the Air Force. I was a B-52 weapons officer, so that's like operating and deploying weapon systems during flight. Worked across conventional nuclear systems, as well as spent some time in Europe as a air liaison officer. So got out in 2020 and then started Canopy. So I've been operating for about close to 3 years now. We are a industrial manufacturer of critical materials, so we focus on the problem of thermal management for space systems, defense systems, and then power energy systems as well. So a lot of use cases across defense, propulsion, hypersonics, reentry systems, and power and energy. So about 13 people full-time currently, and we've brought in about $12 million in funding across government funding as well as venture as well to build out the company. So we're located down in Littleton, and yeah, happy to be here.
Awesome. And Rachel Kelly. Rachel?
Hi, everyone.
Is it hot?
Is it hot? Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Kelly. I'm on the founding team of Radia. We are an aerospace and energy startup out of Boulder. We're designing the world's largest airplane, so think like a football field in length. And the airplane will carry large turbine blades from an OEM or a port of entry to a remote construction site. And what it's doing is essentially solving a massive logistics challenge that exists in wind today of being able to deliver large turbine blades to these remote sites. And so what that does is it can reduce the levelized cost of energy by 35% because you can get higher quality turbines to remote sites. And it also triples the land area that's viable for wind because wind turbines can operate in lower wind speeds if you can get the higher quality, larger turbine blades delivered to remote construction sites. We've been around for about 8 years. We've been working in earnest on the aircraft development for about 6. And we just came out of stealth mode this year. So it's been wonderful to be able to tell the story and see it told in the media. And we made some big announcements this year for our start of building out our aerospace ecosystem. So we've signed on a handful of major aerospace companies to partner with us on the design and build of the aircraft.
All right, so shout out quickly to Dan Caruso and the team at Caruso Ventures for helping load up this panel with really terrific insights. I think we're in for a treat. To level set where I'm coming from, my name is Brad Bernthal. I'm the executive director of something called the Silicon Flatiron Center at CU Boulder. We operate within the triangle of technology, entrepreneurship and innovation, and law and policy. And over the last year, we've become increasingly active in space, both on the entrepreneurship and the law and policy side. Additionally, in terms of CU of note, how many of you know about LASP? So like if you're an Emirate and you want to launch a space program, you contract with LASP to send you up into space. It's a powerhouse at CU, about 700 employees there. And so on behalf of CU Boulder, it's a pretty interesting place and a discussion that I'm really looking forward to as well. So with that, I want to introduce Cody Moore with Caruso Ventures. He's going to do a level setting presentation. Cody, over to you.
Thanks, Brad. Hey everyone, I'm Cody. I lead the investments function at Caruso Ventures. We're the single family office of Dan Caruso, who was just mentioned. We invest across Colorado, really across industries, but we have a decent amount of our portfolio invested in space companies, including some of the panelists up here. And before I dive into the content of the presentation, which is really meant to give you an overview and give you an idea of how big of a role Colorado plays in space, I wanted to take a quick poll. And I wanted to ask, who in the room has been to space? No one has been to space? Who wants to go to space? Who would think it would be really cool? So we have some space tourists in the room. So part of what we'll talk about is where the space economy is going, and space tourism is one of those places. So where are we today? Colorado plays an unquestionable major role in the global space ecosystem. Oftentimes when you hear about the space economy, you're thinking about the future. Like 10 years from now, there's going to be a big space economy. Well, I'm here to tell you that there is a huge space economy here today, and Colorado plays a major role in it. It's about $630 billion as of 2023, and growing at a major rate. Today, about 37,000 Coloradans are employed in SpaceTech. That number is growing rapidly, 33% over the last 5 years. And you can kind of relate where the space industry is now to where telecom and fiber infrastructure was in the 90s. There were companies coming together in Colorado for the fiber movement. And that really came to light in the 2000s where demand exploded. There was the dot-com boom, and those Coloradan fiber companies were really well positioned to make a move and make a whole lot of money in that movement. So where are we going? I already mentioned we're $630 billion today. 1.8 trillion in the next decade is where we think we'll be, so 3x. That is a massive increase from where we are today. And not only will that be increases to existing technologies such as launches and satellites and telecommunications infrastructure in space, but you're going to see completely new industries evolve over the next 10 years. Have you ever thought of mining the moon for elements? Mining asteroids for elements? How about manufacturing in space? Manufacturing drugs or even human organs in space in zero gravity environments. Not to mention new threats, new defense applications. All of that will add up to an explosive space economy over the next decade. Another fact it's worth showing because it came out last week is investment dollars in the space tech industry. For 2024, we're in September right now, it's already eclipsed 2023. So we still have a few months to go. Clearly, investors are excited about the space. From an investment perspective, we're already hearing about M&A opportunities, even IPO opportunities from some of these companies. So when you compare where SpaceTech was, say, a decade ago, it's really uncomparable from an investment perspective now. So if you were in the 90s and you invested in fiber infrastructure, my guess is you fared pretty well over the next 2 decades. So maybe space is in a similar place. From a GDP perspective, the US economy is growing about 1.9% a year right now. Space is at about 2.3%. So growing at a faster rate than the economy as a whole, no question. So zooming in on Colorado, there's many, many different ways to evaluate where we stand in terms of the space economy. There's education, there's number of launches, there's investment dollars, number of scale-ups. But when you add them all together and you take a step back and you compare state by state, Colorado is really the second biggest space economy by state. Just to kind of take these data points and zoom out a little bit, we have a very, very robust startup and scale-up community that we'll walk through in detail during this presentation. If you're a startup or scale-up, having the opportunity to base your company where your customers are located, where your big major companies like a Sierra Space or an Air Force are within driving distance, it gives you an amazing opportunity to form those customer relationships. It's why we see a lot of companies not only starting here, but moving here. Investors are here. I know Dan Caruso gave a big presentation on space or investors in general, but there's plenty of space investors located in Colorado. And arguably the biggest data point of them all, some of which is highlighted on this slide, is employment and attracting talent. Through the universities, through the production of high talent, PhDs, aerospace engineers, not only are the talent going to school here, but they want to stay here. They want to be in Colorado. They want the quality of life. They want to start their families here. So when it comes to attracting talent and retaining talent, Colorado is an amazing place to do that. So looking ahead, kind of zooming out on Colorado, where is the space economy? Where are these companies located? You'll see that it's pretty well concentrated in the Front Range today, but it's really spread out across the Front Range, all the way from Berthoud all the way down to Colorado Springs. We even have representation on the western slope with Agile Space. And what we can tell you is that in 2035, when the space economy triples, you're going to see a lot of this white space fill in. You're going to see more rural activity, more activity out of Durango, more activity out of Fort Collins. Startups are already starting there, and they're getting ready to scale. So taking you through this landscape, who are these space companies and why is this such a big deal? I think over the next 2 slides, you'll realize that a lot of these names are well known. But starting with really the public sector. So these are kind of the backbone to the Colorado space ecosystem. Many of these are customers. You have education institutions, you have research institutions. You saw on a prior slide that Colorado is #1 in NASA research funding. Many thanks to CU on this slide. But you have organizations like the Air Force. You have organizations like the Space Force, which is also in Colorado Springs. You have organizations like CU, CSU, Colorado School of Mines. All of this adds up to a really robust educational, research, and government institutional ecosystem. There's also an organization on here, it's called Tycho Station out in Lafayette. It's really a co-working space, but it's really unique and worth highlighting. Certainly one of the first space-specific co-working spaces we've come across. But it's Lafayette. If you go, you'll walk across office by office and see space startup after space startup. And it's another example of what makes Colorado unique and how we're all kind of coming together to make a space economy, a big space economy, a reality. Looking ahead to the primes, as we call them, are really the giant aerospace companies. You'll know that their only focus isn't space. They're also certainly in defense, they're in aerospace. It's not to say that they're headquartered in Colorado, but they have major, major presences in our state, and they have key decision makers, which is really important for the companies you see on stage and companies you'll see highlighted later in the deck as they build commercial relationships. So companies like Sierra Space, right in our backyard, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin. A lot of these companies also have venture arms that are turning around and doing strategic investment into these companies. So it's really cool to see them supporting this ecosystem and highlighting how important it is to them. The scale-ups, I want to kind of spend some time on this slide. So the scale-ups, when we think of a scale-up, these are companies employing 50, 60, hundreds of people. They're raising money at VC staggering valuations of 100, 200, 300, even 400 million in some of these examples. These are companies that are growing rapidly. They're talking about exit opportunities. They're talking about making acquisitions to build a bigger company. And again, they're right here in Colorado. So if you were to call out Ursa Major, which is in Berthoud, they're building huge, call it Earth to space thrusters. You also have Agile Space, which is also building thruster technology, but they're smaller thrusters for in-space maneuvering and propulsion. You also have companies like Lunar Outpost, which is building Moon and hopefully eventually Mars rovers, going up to space and evaluating what's beneath them. So there's an amazing selection, a diverse selection of companies right here in Colorado that are scaling and eventually could be a great Colorado exit story. Startups, this slide got really busy really quick. Frankly, all the companies did not end up on this slide because we didn't have enough room, but it goes to show how many companies are incorporating in Colorado, so founders coming here knowing they want to start a company here. But we also have time and time again stories of companies that start elsewhere, start on the West Coast, start on the East Coast, realize that they're having trouble attracting the right talent, and make a decision early on, hey, let's move to Colorado, let's establish a hub here. We know it's going to be easier to find talented aerospace engineers that want to be here and retain talent. So Canopy Aerospace, you'll see, is highlighted in our panel today. They recently moved and opened their facility in Littleton, Colorado, and I'm sure Matt will share some of his reasons for doing so. And this presentation can't go without mentioning the adjacent aerospace companies. So SpaceTech and aerospace often get commingled at times, but there's a big, certainly a talent, call it transition between the two industries where aerospace talent moves to SpaceTech, SpaceTech moves to aerospace, so it's a very friendly relationship between these two. Colorado has a very robust ecosystem of aerospace as well. You have companies like Boom Supersonic, which is building the world's next really supersonic passenger plane since the Concorde. They're already out there testing the technology and making really good strides towards actually accomplishing that. You have companies like Radia, Rachel on our panel is featured from Radia, building the world's largest plane, purpose-built to haul wind turbines for the clean energy movement, and several others, including H3X, which just closed their Series A at a great valuation. They just moved here to Louisville, another example of a company that started elsewhere and has relocated. So I hope you're leaving this presentation saying, wow, Colorado is like home to so many aerospace companies, so many space tech companies, maybe companies I want to invest in because they're doing great things. They're making an impact not only with the Coloradan economy, with the global economy, with the role that Colorado plays, but there's one feature, or one, I'll say, attribute that we left out that I don't think anyone's ever going to top Colorado on, and we're the closest state to space, like hands down. Like California is not going to touch us. Anyway, to wrap up and hand it back to Brad, the ecosystem is robust. It's going to 3x in the next decade. You're going to want to stay in touch with all the companies I mentioned, but especially these three. And happy to take questions at the end if you'd like.
Cody, that was terrific, and shout out to Zev at Endeavor, who I think also had a role in putting that together. I love having that slide deck, by the way. That's a really helpful sort of snapshot as to where we are as of 2024 here in Colorado. So to the panelists, first question is, Richard Florida famously announced in the mid-aughts that the world is flat. That is, that location doesn't matter anymore. I'm sorry, Thomas Friedman wrote the book, The World is Flat. Richard Florida, an economic geographer, said, no, the world is not flat. The world remains spiky, that especially with respect to creative activity that generates innovation, geography still matters. Cody just made the case that basically with respect to space, the Front Range, LA, and we could quibble about some other areas, but location seems to matter. Why does it matter as a general matter, and what leverage are you getting from resources here in Colorado?
I'll go. Yeah, so I can go into why Canopy picked Colorado. Number of different reasons there. First one, mainly the economic ecosystem here. We compared LA and a few other areas as well, but got a lot of early support from economic development corporations, OEDA Office of Economic Development and International Trade, as well as we had some local investors here, right? Dan Caruso Ventures, Industrious Ventures as well, and then the commercial partnerships as well. So. We had that one slide with all the defense primes and the ecosystem there. So a lot of partners for us to work with, ones we work with today as well, and then the talent base. So that's, kind of the last thing we looked at was, where do we go to find talent? And, we can pull from universities, and we work with a lot of the local universities here, School of Mines, CU Boulder as well. But then finding, good talent from all the other great aerospace space companies out here was one of the big reasons for us to establish out here.
Super helpful. Chris or Rachel?
I think geography absolutely does matter. Radia is a global company. We have partners around the world. However, we benefit so much from the thriving ecosystem in Colorado, whether that's financial ecosystem, whether that's the workforce, or even the thriving ecosystem of other companies. It's great to be able to brainstorm with peers at other aerospace and space companies about how did they solve this regulatory challenge, or how did they solve some other technical challenge or organizational challenge. And it's great to be able to have those in-person, close-by relationships with those nearby companies. And in some cases, we've even partnered with those companies to leverage their workforce and their existing talent and expertise. And so geography absolutely does matter, and there's a reason we're in Colorado.
Yeah, I won't repeat all of it, but I mean, definitely talent. This has been huge. Being able to bring people in and actually retain them. It's such a fantastic place to live. I moved here 20 years ago, and I was moving out for 5 years with my wife, and we're still here, and our family, our kids are all born here, and we're not going anywhere. It's an amazing place to live. I'll take yours. I'm back. There you go. Yeah, so as well as talent, I think you can't overlook the value of customers being in your backyard. So space is it's a very interesting business when you start a relationship with a new customer. A lot of it is a trust sale. It really is a very big decision they're making there. They're buying a whole bunch of components or spacecraft, whatever it is, but they're buying things to fulfill a mission. And usually if one of those things fails, the whole thing fails. And there's risk. There's lots of things you have to balance, cost and schedule and the rest of it, but a lot of it will come down to personal relationships. And there's a huge amount of people that have been in this industry here for kind of 20, 25 years. And once you're plugged into that ecosystem, it's a fantastic network to leverage. Just the last one as well is I didn't set out to start companies and grow companies. I was an engineer to begin with, and I had to learn a lot very quickly. And it's not like this has just happened in the last 5 years or so. I was lucky enough to work with two guys that set up two individual companies, scaled them pretty rapidly. They were both in the kind of hundreds of employees. One was down in Golden, the other one was actually up in North Boulder. They sold their companies. One of them was actually an early board advisor for Agile. The other one was my boss for about 5 years. So that kind of experience, that spirit of entrepreneurship, and how to really build a business within space, there's some really unique talent and folks to draw from here.
Quick question to double down on geography. You mentioned talent, you mentioned customers, you just adverted to culture as well, a place where companies can grow and scale up. How about funding? How much is that regionally specific? So, the classic version is that venture capitalists didn't want to go outside, 10 square miles. With the space industry, does it look like that in terms of funding? Are there advantages to being in Colorado when it comes to funding?
Yeah, I mean, massively. So obviously we've got one of our friends in the room here with Dan.
Dan, go like this. Let's see what their answer would be if you've got your muffs on. Yeah.
But also we've had investment from Lockheed Martin, who are obviously local here in state in
So you guys took
South
strategic
Denver.
investment from
Took
Lockheed,
strategic
okay.
investment too. But we started out with friends and family investors, right? And most of those were Colorado, are actually local down in the Western Slope. So yeah, it's been fantastic for us.
That's
It's been
super
absolutely
interesting.
fantastic.
Any other notes on the funding?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it prior, but yeah, a lot of good investor base here. The local investors we have. I think there's newer funds being set up as well, and a lot more investors are looking to invest. Aside from the West Coast, East Coast, but look at Rocky Mountain, kind of area, and more to the Midwest because there's a lot of opportunities across the U.S.
So related question to geography is Cody talked about the primes and the potential for interactions ranging from strategic investment from a big incumbent in the space industry with a startup, but also I'm interested in information sharing. That is one of the reasons that people tend to concentrate is I'm working on a problem that's adjacent to yours, your engineer's talking to mine, and collectively we get a group form of genius. Brian Eno has famously called that Scenius. Does Scenius work in the space industry? Because for a lot of us, we come from the software background, right? Where it's about speed and we're not gonna keep secrets that long anyway. So let's just share, we're collectively all gonna be better off. But space, you've got some unique aspects to this. Primes, first of all, but also a lot of dual use technologies that are gonna have commercial applications and military applications. What does information sharing look like? And maybe you can talk about that specific to your companies.
I'll start and pass it over. So just really, really quickly, I've seen such change in the industry. So 15, 20 years ago, and there's some folks in the audience, there's one here who's going to resonate with all this. It was so top down. And what I mean by that is you'll have a very specific kind of government problem, which you can solve with some sort of space project. That gets flown to a prime, these requirements get flown to a prime, these requirements then get flown through to these suppliers, and it was like a diode. The information was not going back up. You weren't able to kind of collaborate. You literally got the RFP, and once you got a request for a proposal, you're in a blackout, so you couldn't even talk to them anymore. Any questions you asked got shared with everybody else, so you're giving away all your good ideas. The last, I'd say, in the last 5 to 10 years, but last 5 years especially, the spirit has really changed. So it's the primes know they've got to do things differently. They're incumbent kind of aerospace and defense firms. They're big firms that are trying to compete with the likes of SpaceX, which are just going at an amazing speed. They know they're having to evolve not just technology, but kind of process. And they're looking to us actually lower down the supply chain, the new businesses which are coming in with new ideas and actually new approaches to actually learn from that. So yeah, I actually really enjoy it. It used to be you get a request for proposal that'd be 3 months. I was telling Cody before, we had a request for a quote on Thursday night. So Sunday, I'm working 11 o'clock trying to approve it. We get it in with the customer. We're in a meeting with them on a Tuesday. It's the most open conversation I've ever had with a company that's probably about 100 to 1,000 times our size. So it's really changing, a lot more collaborative, and folks taking advantage of that.
Yeah, I think you said it well. There's something that's happened over the last 5-10 years, I think, where the primes, the large companies, recognize the momentum that the startups and the scale-ups have brought to the industry. And I think they recognize that they want and need the creativity and the agility that those companies bring to the ecosystem. And so the openness to partnering, to collaboration has increased exponentially. And I think there's such value in that, right? Even for us, space adjacent, right? The companies in the Colorado area, they're solving similar problems, whether it's a regulatory challenge that we all face or even a technology challenge. And I think information sharing can bring such value to the whole ecosystem.
I'll just add one more thing there. Yeah, I can echo a lot of that just from, in very recent times over the last year, being established out here as a new startup, especially in the manufacturing space on the supply chain side. It takes a lot of effort to build that confidence with your primes and your customers. The relationship with startups is a lot easier, right? Startup to startup, not really any barriers to communication there. But once you kind of go up the kind of bureaucratic chain of defense primes, then you get a lot more kind of restrictions there. But I think the locality matters. Being here in Denver has really helped because we've had senior executives from Lockheed come visit us. We've have a good relationship with Sierra Space. We go visit them, they come visit us. A lot of good collaborative opportunities to where once you build that trust and confidence, then everyone's kind of open up a little bit more.
Do you get any leverage in manufacturing shared resources with any of the others, or is that we need to roll our own on that and it really doesn't matter?
I'd say the leverage we get is in the R&D innovation space because the further you go upstream, your integrators, their core focus area is on integration, design, and building a vehicle or a missile system or satellite system. They don't necessarily want to do all the R&D for manufacturing, and they don't want to do the production as well. So as they, work with manufacturers, at our place in the supply chain, it helps them, scale up, lower cost, lead times. But then we do a lot of the R&D, which helps, increase performance upstream. Is where a lot of the benefit is.
Can I ask you guys to make some of this specific to your company? So whether it's rapid propulsion, some of the manufacturing and ceramic works that you guys do, or Rachel, the work around. So I don't know if you guys caught this in the intro. One of the areas that Rachel's company is going deep on is a cleaner type of fuel, which is actually a major problem in space that, rocket fuel quite literally is kind of an environmental disaster. So as you guys are working on these things, are there local collaborations that you can point to like, yeah, this was pretty cool in terms of we were trying to solve this problem, company Y over here, or this person helped us solve it, or if there's nothing like that, be interesting to know as well. Rachel?
We actually have many of those. We've worked with local companies to do everything from something as detailed as put together our fire suppression regulatory compliance plan, all the way up to how are we going to comply with the latest regulations around development assurance for aircraft. Well, there's friendly aircraft development companies in the area that are having to put together similar plans. So working together to share ideas and processes and thoughts there. And then those are all on the aerospace side. We've of course also done collaborations with local energy companies and also the National Renewable Energy Lab focused on wind is in the Boulder area. And so we've worked with them on various analyses to make sure we're thoroughly vetting and supporting our business case.
Super interesting. Matt, Chris, any notes?
Yeah, I'd say one thing that we're doing collaboratively, and this relates to Chris and Agile, on the advanced materials side. So, as part of Canopy, we do advanced ceramic materials that increase performance on thermal management, electrical conductivity, as well. And one of those use cases is propulsion systems, whether in space or terrestrially. But that's where I know a lot of our engineers are talking to yours
so you're
about.
Trying to sell in right now as we're speaking.
Correct.
Yeah, I got you.
No.
Let me get this deal done. I'm a lawyer. I could help out. The contract.
But no, it's understanding the requirements, right? What kind of material properties do you need that will help your system perform better, right? Lower cost of maneuver, things like that. Because what we do is, a layer downstream that helps uplift the entire industry. But we can't do that unless we understand the use case better. We understand, what are the requirements that you need to be successful. So I think that's one good thing about being local, right? Just being able to pick up the phone or go visit someone and understand upstream what needs to be built.
Your customer needs are clear. Chris, any additional notes?
Yeah, Matt stole one of mine, but a couple. So I think just in the spirit of being much more open and the customers wanting to work with you. So one thing I do want to say that's really helped Agile and the company before is SBIR. And that has become a lot more.
Just by way of hands, how many of you know what an SBIR grant is? Just
Thank you.
Dirty? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just quick and dirty. So the different agencies that use space technology, so typically NASA, typically Air Force, but there are others, they'll have specific problems that they're seeing in mission sets that they want to execute in the next 5 or 10 years, and they'll flow down development grants to actually develop that tech. Traditionally, there's been this, I'm sure you've heard of it, the kind of, stay again. Can I have that one? Someone's trying to cut me off. Yeah, so typically you have this kind of valley of death in the past that there's an awful lot of tech that's developed, but it's not commercialized, it doesn't become a product, it doesn't then get into the actual ecosystem and help solve problems. I've seen a big shift, and that's improved a lot. So whereas again, it used to be top down, you're now seeing a lot of collaboration with government, with primes, and then also with the suppliers of the tech. So the last company we were at, we had basically an agreement with one of the primes, with Air Force. We all put in 7-figure funds, and we got that technology to market and actually to space within a couple of years. It was a great success story for everybody, and it actually pulled it into actual missions. So it's flying on York Space Systems, actually, on all that Tranzero spacecraft for the Air Force. So that's one. The other one I just want to say is the government is also recognizing that the space industrial base needs to be beefed up, and they're trying to encourage the kind of private investment side of things. So we're actually involved in a couple of programs at the moment where private investment gets matched against government dollars from the DoD, actually. And that is incredibly powerful. It allows us to go much quicker. It allows our investors to actually help DoD, and then that funding actually goes towards actual projects, which then get into the hands of the warfighter faster. So yeah, much more collaborative than it's ever been.
So I'll just make a note, and if you could keep the mic, I'm going to have one quick follow-up. So first of all, in the front range, many of us have been part of a conversation that wouldn't it be cool if we get startups, incumbents, research labs, and the universities all working together. It's really hard to do. It sounds like there's promise that actually this is trending in a very good direction in the space industry, which is super interesting. Second, I'm going to follow up with one question to Chris, and then we're going to open up. So if you've got questions, get them ready. Specific to rapid propulsion, and this is really less about the geography and more about your company. For those of you who have been following, when Cody said space is now, if you look at the number, the commercial activity, and especially the number of satellites over the last 2 years, it's just exponential. I mean, space is here, and the really interesting thing is there's not a lot of law as the backdrop. And so it's kind of like the Wild West up there in terms of situational awareness. One of the companies up on the stage, Keihan, does situational awareness where they'll say your satellite is about ready to run into a Chinese satellite. And it's crazy the way this works, by the way. They'll reach out to the Chinese satellite and say, we're going to connect, no response. Reach back and say, we're going to steer 5 degrees this way, don't move. And you may or may not get an okay. I mean, that's the way this is going down right now. I was thinking in terms of situational awareness, the ability to maneuver, as well as the need to deorbit. This is you guys, yes?
Yes and no. So the deorbit maneuvers are actually fairly simple. You can do that over a long period of time. So there's actually a different propulsion technology that's used for that. We're actually much more for big maneuvers that have to be done quickly. So think things like if you want to decelerate a lander to actually land on the moon, the only way you can do that is with chemical propulsion. So you may not know this, but in Durango, we're building the rocket engines to actually land two NASA landers in the next couple of years, putting payload on the moon for NASA. And you'll see a press release in a couple of weeks. We're doing the same thing for a first international customer as well, which is awesome. Space situational awareness is kind of one side of it, and there's the environmental side of it. I think you're alluding to there, but the other half of it is the space is becoming what's called a contested domain now. We do actually have a space force that is gearing up to make sure that we are ready to actually protect our assets in space, and there's a very, very good reason for that. There's a report out from Breaking News this morning. One of the generals was was talking about the release that Russia could well have a nuclear weapon on orbit or plans to do that to actually take out spacecraft, right? Take out our assets, take out the things you're reliant on for the GPS in your phone. So space situational analysts, knowing what's going on is one half of it. That's looking for things in space and seeing what's changing. The other half of it is actually doing something about it. And if you're going to do something about it, you need to move quickly, and we're right in the middle of that. It's chemical propulsion.
Well, on that happy note, let's open it up for some questions. What do we got?
Got to turn it on. Ha. Go ahead, stand and introduce yourself.
Hello, Andy Fine from Fine Physics. There's actually a question for all of you that you're all building hardware. I'm wondering, as startups and with limited funds, are you putting more of your funds into actual practical development, as in building and testing things? Are you trying to do more and more in the virtual space?
Sorry, was it the second part?
Are you trying to do more and more in the virtual space rather than building and testing?
Doing it through software and virtual testing, or doing it in the hardware?
I'd say it's all of it. A lot of R&D, right? And then we also have to get to commercialization, production as well. For us as a manufacturer, we do work at the intersection of software, advanced material science, and process as well, which is the manufacturing process. But it's a lot to take on at the same time, right? So, for us, at least for us, we work on the advanced material side, as well as some of the software around design for manufacturability, and then kind of later stages when we look at, okay, can we make the process better? And that requires, right, tens of millions of dollars of capital investment to do that. But for the time being, you have to kind of develop what are kind of the lead ahead, kind of data points that help you understand, the industrial space within our market better, so that you can kind of, continue to build, around that.
Yeah, I'll give a couple. So we didn't talk about how we're different for kind of chemical propulsion, and there's two big differentiators. We've actually been doing chemical propulsion testing for about 15 years, which is pretty incredible. You might have a thruster this big, but it's a 3-story building, so actually test it. There's a huge amount of complexity in that. And we generate a huge amount of information there, very, very high precision, so high frequency kind of data acquisition. There's an opportunity there to use AI machine learning to actually feed into design techniques so we can improve it. We do a lot of 3D printing, so we actually try and print the complexity of the product into these sub-assemblies instead of like traditionally having a very long bill of materials. As you build up each layer of these AM-generated piece parts, you actually take a picture. And at the moment, we're doing some pretty cursory stuff with that, but using, again, some AI to be able to see defects, improve yield, and again, actually feed back into the design process as well. There's like a lot of potential. So yeah, that's one of the ways we're going.
Another question? Yeah.
Does the Colorado spaceport play into this whole conversation?
Did you guys hear the question? Can someone repeat it?
I mean, I think any more access to space, one of the reasons that the industry has changed so much is because of SpaceX, right? They've done an amazing job in like opening up, getting payloads on orbit. It was literally, I think it was 10 or 12 launches a year from the US traditionally. Now we're doing multiples a month. There's hundreds of thousands of spacecraft that are in orbit now and operational. For me, the more spaceports, more access to space, it's going to create new business models that'll leverage that, and it's good business. So yeah, I want to see it succeed.
It really helps? A huge airplane that can transport rocket stages and satellites to any spaceport.
All right, 60 seconds before we get the hook. Graham is here, recent graduate, super talented. His resume is out there. Graham, raise your hand. Okay. Graham's like, this sounds cool. There's going to be value creation. There's going to be jobs here in the next decade. Where do I go next to get hooked up with the space industry in Colorado? One suggestion across the line. Let's go first, Rachel.
Well, you can go direct to the companies. Radia has, and I'm sure all of you do, have a thriving recruiting system. So you can go direct to the companies.
I'd say collaborating with through universities as well, right? We do a lot of research with some of the ecosystem here. So I think going through your professors, right, going through other students, and then a lot of the research departments there are doing kind of government level work as well. SBIRs, STTRs, right? We do some stuff. One of our contracts with school mines as well. So that's one way to get plugged in, as well as the startup space, right? I think we have a really great community. Denver Startup Week, as an example.
Are there meetup groups, informal groups, regular meeting in the space industry?
Yeah, I'd say that's a good point. There are a lot of happy hours. Happy to connect after. I'll send you a few your way.
We don't need to make them a drunk. We'll just get them out. Yeah. Any others?
Just take a look at our website.
All right. This has been a terrific discussion. It'll be very interesting to see where this goes the next 5 to 10 years. Please help me thank Cody, Chris, Matt, Rachel for a terrific discussion.